This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
This is the Long Island Report on 107.1 WLIR. Using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Good afternoon. This is the Long Island Report. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend and esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party, as well as being the vice chair of the state party. Welcome back, Jesse. How are you?
I'm doing well, Your Honor. It's a pleasure to be here with all of our listeners.
Well, let's begin by this whole phenomenon of the Biden papers. And it's no longer just the Trump papers and the Biden papers. They just found papers in the residence of former Vice President Pence. So let me tell you my thoughts on this whole situation. I think the Attorney General was wrong to start an investigation with a special counsel against former President Trump. I mean, there was no attempt to influence peddle here, to sell secrets. You know, you pack up an office, you don't know what's in the boxes, and your assistants pack it up. You don't know. You don't go through it page by page. And he was cooperating. There was full cooperation. If they needed more, they could have given him more time. They sent in the FBI with a raid, search warrants, guns drawn. It was a horrific situation. The Republicans were very defensive about it. The Democrats were gleeful about it. They thought at long last they'll find something to bury former President Trump. Then it turns out that they've found at least 5 and now maybe 6 batches of documents spread out a number of residents and offices. And the most interesting thing, is revealed by Miranda Devine of the Post, is that some of these documents may show a linkage between not only Hunter Biden, the son, and the brother, whatever his name is, but Joe Biden himself when he was vice president. So we need to know what's in those documents to see whether or not Joe Biden was influence peddling with his brother and his son. And then the third group, of course, now is Pence, and of course he just got counsel to review documents. They found the documents and they notified everyone. They turned it over to archives, and it's moving on. This is my net on this. You shouldn't have special counsels for Trump. You shouldn't have special counsels for Biden. You shouldn't have special counsels for Pence. You know, these documents are overly classified. You know, the numbers is in the millions every year of documents that are classified. People move out of their offices. They don't know what's in the boxes. Unless you show a real intent to do something wrong, then I think you should stop overclassifying and stop trying to prosecute. What do you think?
I think that what we've demonstrated here is, and I think we've said this, Your Honor, over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks, is that, number one, the American government doesn't know how to take care of its own documents. And that needs to be addressed and improved. Maybe even, as you said before, the need of a special counsel that has been placed on for President Biden and for President Trump. Number two, I think it's very clear here that there is 2 ways of handling this. First and foremost, President Trump can have declassified anything at any time if he wants. As you pointed out last week, Vice President doesn't have the same authority, so they don't have that same gravity. I think that if Attorney General Garland and the FBI handled the first incident properly, the Trump incident properly, we would not be having the country spiral into this quagmire of the handling of documents, special prosecutors, and now it becoming a political football. But that's their overzealousness. That's a weaponization of the Department of Justice and the weaponization of the FBI at the highest as leadership levels. And that's what we're dealing with now. Here now we have, Vice President Pence. Again, like the former Vice President Biden was not able to declassify documents. He promptly, after a review, gave this information to the White House. But let's not also forget the timing of all this. Trump was moving along with his lawyers. There's always probably some type of issue involving, what's mine, what's yours, and that was what the lawyers groups were dealing with. You'd see that as a judge play out in front of you, probably like a divorce, most likely. But yet, it was handled with a raid, and now we handle it. Now they're stuck. If we handle it this way, we have to handle it almost similar with the special counsel with Biden. But I think what's interesting is what you pointed out. Two things. Number one, what you just pointed out is that there are now alleged ties, possibly in those documents, about influence peddling by the Biden administration during his time in office. The other thing that I would point out to you is that while the Pence information was prompt, and unfortunately the Trump information and disclosure was released in the form of a raid, it was the Biden administration, this most transparent administration that's supposed to be here in the United States in decades, held up that information for 6 days to make sure it did not, because they didn't want it to spill out into the midterm elections. Here is where, at the genesis of this problem, is the weaponization and the politicization of the Department of Justice by Democrats. Because if they handled the Trump issue first and properly and fairly and impartially, we would not be in this quagmire.
Absolutely right, Jesse. And I think, and we can talk to Congressman Nick Langworthy, who will be joining us in the next segment, but we can talk to him about the investigation process and what the House Republicans will be doing with their investigative powers, their subpoena powers, to find out about that relationship. And I think it's very important. That's what separates out, it seems to me, the Biden situation from the Trump or the Pence situation. You have serious allegations involving the son and the brother about the dealings in various countries, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, influence peddling, whether it was correct or incorrect. But there's a document trail. There are a lot of documents there. There are conversations. You have Bo Belinsky, who's a partner with the brother and the son. He said that Joe Biden was directly involved. I think that is different than the Trump situation or the Pence situation. Subject, of course, to new information coming forward. Influence peddling is one thing. The failure to promptly move documents is another. I'm not a big fan of having classified documents or top secret documents floating around next to Corvettes and garages, nor am I a big fan of having it in Mar-a-Lago, but I'm not a big fan of using investigative agencies, the FBI and the Justice Department prosecution agency, to harass people because they have the political power and they're controlling the government. To use the term of what you've been using correctly, is the weaponization is a very, very dangerous thing. And Kevin is giving me the sign. He's trying to get in touch with Congressman Langworthy now. This is the Long Island Report. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party. We'll take a short break and we'll be back for a more interesting conversation.
This episode is brought to you by the Disney Plus Hulu Max bundle, with plans starting at just $16.99 a month. Stream the latest seasons of The Last of Us on Max, Andor on Disney Plus, and the final season of The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu. All of these and more streaming soon. Terms apply. Visit DisneyPlus HuluMaxBundle.com for more details.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
All right, this is the Long Island Report. We are back. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. We're honored and privileged to have Congressman Nick Langworthy, who also happens to be the state Republican chair, newly elected member of the House of Representatives from upstate New York, and the winner of the primary and the election, recently sworn in. Welcome back to the Long Island Report, Congressman.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back.
So, Nick, why don't you do a further introduction of our esteemed guest?
Well, it's a pleasure to have Nick here. Nick has not only been an outstanding public servant, he has guided this party through some of its tumultuous times and to great lengths. And he is credited. New York is credited with giving the Republicans the majority in the House of Representatives. And to his great leadership, we were able to secure that. And it's great to have him as a partner, first and myself in my capacity as a political chairman, but as a New Yorker, to have him fighting down there in D.C. with, our members of Congress here, like, LaLota, Garbarino, D'Esposito here from Long Island. So it's great to have you.
So,
well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, Congressman, let me raise this issue with you because it's been breaking in the news and apparently has some of the Democratic members of the House heads in a lather because Speaker McCarthy, in my humble opinion, justifiably so, has denied seats on the Intelligence Committee to Adam Schiff and to Swalwell of California. And what do you think about that?
Well, I support Speaker McCarthy in that effort. I mean, he was elected to be a bold leader for this majority, and he's done just that. I mean, this is a move that I think the American people were crying out for. I mean, there's been no more egregious act than the fact that Eric Swalwell, who was found to be having an affair with a Chinese spy, was allowed to remain on the Intelligence Committee. I mean, this is a breach of national security. I mean, the Intelligence Committee, I'm not privy to the things that members of the Intelligence Committee are. This man would not qualify for a security clearance in the private sector, and he should not be afforded that security clearance, through the House of Representatives. I mean, this is really so Speaker McCarthy going ahead and pulling, that committee assignment back and denying that from Hakeem Jeffries, I think is exactly what this country needs to reconnect a little bit of faith in the decision making that goes on here in Washington, D.C. I mean, this is about accountability. I mean, Ilhan Omar being denied, the seat on foreign affairs. I mean, she has stated time and again a level of anti-Semitism, a level of anti-American behavior, questioning 9/11 and its validity. This is not someone that should serve on a committee like that. So I really salute Kevin McCarthy.
And what about Adam Schiff?
And Adam Schiff, I mean, with the continual lies, mistruths in twisting, he doesn't belong on that committee. And I think that what Speaker McCarthy has done here is just what the doctor ordered and sends a loud and clear message. There's a new sheriff in town.
Well, before I turn it over to Jesse, I just want to tell you my thoughts particularly about the Adam Schiff situation. This country became divided because of leaks that came out of the Intelligence Committee when it was chaired by Adam Schiff and pushed to two impeachment proceedings against an incumbent president of the United States. And Congressman Peter King, who's our colleague here at WABC, Peter has said, and he was on the Intelligence Committee, Peter said that they had these meetings, these briefings downstairs at the Capitol, and then Schiff would come up and do press briefings that had nothing to do with actually what transpired at these secret meetings. He was making it up and he was making promises. They had hidden documents, hidden secrets, whistleblowers, all kinds of stories to link Trump to selling out to the Russians, and none of it was true. And to me, it's totally outrageous to allow a guy like Schiff in any particular position, but of responsibility, but particularly when it deals with the intelligence and security of the United States.
We could afford no leaks in our intelligence, committee, and anyone that would abuse the powers that they have been given through that, should be held accountable. And I think that's exactly what has happened here.
Jesse.
Yeah, let's just go back to Schiff because we'll talk about politicization of a committee. It's one of the reasons is, and maybe you can share some light for our listeners to understand this, is that the members of the Intelligence Committee are granted higher security and they're afforded more information than an average member of Congress would, like yourself or anybody else, because of the sensitivity of national security. And it's been said and certified that Schiff knowingly continued to spout lies about Russian collusion, even though the Intelligence Committee and the community said that was wrong. And that lie led to some of the divisive politics and some of the divisive nature of our nation. But maybe you can give us some insight onto how that committee operates separately and with more information than maybe say with yourself or any member of the Congress that doesn't serve on that committee.
I mean, absolutely. As a member of Congress, I don't have top secret clearance just by my election. I mean, but the members of the Intelligence Committee are entrusted with what's the equivalent of top secret clearance. They're told things about American intelligence that the rank and file are not, and it comes with a different level of accountability and trust, and it has to. If that system doesn't work, there will be a tremendous breakdown. So I think this is a course correction. What Speaker McCarthy has done by removing these two individuals from the Intelligence Committee is exactly what the American people need to know, that we are taking the duties seriously. There was a kangaroo court in that Intelligence Committee with those two individuals there, and I think this will change the dynamic right away.
Let me ask you this.
And let's not forget.
Oh.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, and let's not forget that while we hear about the Intelligence Committee, Schiff and Sliwa, unlike Pelosi, who decided what was in and removed Republicans from all committees, Leader McCarthy, the Speaker McCarthy, he respected the votes of that district, of those individuals, and they're still able to serve on different committees.
Different committees, yes. Yes, he just said they're just not going to serve on that committee. And I think that the Speaker, using his prerogative to do that, will give people more faith in all of our leadership and hopefully more faith in Congress. We are sent here to do a job. We have divided government. It must be respected. And, I was appointed to the House Oversight Committee, and I think we're going to have, a lot of hearings. And we're going to go get some, of the American people's questions answered that haven't been answered in the last 2 years.
Well, let me ask you this, Congressman. Jesse and I were talking in the earlier segment, we were talking about the new linkage in the Biden papers as revealed by Miranda Devine of the New York Post, that there may be a linkage between Joe Biden himself when he was vice president and his son and his brother in terms of influence peddling scam and the abusive office to enrich the Biden family. Is the House going to go forward and look at that relationship?
I think that it's a certainty. I mean, between what Jim Jordan will be doing through the Judiciary Committee and what we will be doing in the Oversight Committee under the leadership of Chairman James Comer, I mean, there will be a great deal of scrutiny into the Biden family business deals, the self-dealing, the international entanglements. There's just way too much smoke surrounding Hunter Biden that there just has to be some fire there. And I think if some of the things that some are concluding is true and accurate, it presents itself as very damaging, to our country. I mean, do we have, a foreign entanglement that puts our country at danger? I'm very fearful of what we might find, but we have to, we have to have the hearings, we have to do the investigations, and we have to ask tough questions and get the answers that the American people deserve.
Jesse.
Let's stick with the House Oversight Committee, because that seems it's going to be a very busy committee as we come into the next 118th Congress. What other hearings has the chairman and yourself outlined that are going to be going forward over the next 2 years by the House Oversight Committee, other than Hunter Biden's the business dealings of President Biden and others?
Sure. We sat today for the first time and had a talk with former chairman of the committee, Jason Chaffetz, to get a little advice, going forward. But I've been very impressed with Chairman Comer and some of the outline that he's put forward. We were just ratified as a committee this morning, but we really look to the origins of COVID. That is something that is, I think the American people in the world are owed many answers, and how does that apply to, the CCP and the Chinese, government in response? I think we have an awful lot of questions for Dr. Fauci regarding, vaccines and COVID response. There will be probably a good deal of that of time devoted to the pandemic response. But we also have an inferno raging at the southern border, and we have serious questions for Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas, who I believe has been completely derelict in duties. What sort of edicts have gone out to create this border crisis? This is definitely coming from on high somewhere. We're going to get to the bottom of that. Because if we're going to seal this border, if we're going to ever tackle this problem, we have to investigate as to how the administration has decided to create these lax policies in the first place. I think Speaker McCarthy has pledged that we are going to have hearings on the southern border, and I expect to hear more about that in the near future. But I know that we will have some hearings on the southern border very, very soon.
Well, I'll tell you this: we had Professor Alan Dershowitz, one of the constitutional law giants in this country, from Harvard Law School, on the Cats at Night show. We have him on a regular basis every Tuesday night, and I've been pressing Alan on the following issue, and I'm not a big fan of pushing for impeachment of officials, presidents, or secretaries, but unless it's really needed. And I said to Alan, and Alan's view is much more circumspect than mine. I think Mayorkas, for example, hasn't carried out his oath of office, and I think there's a real question about whether President Biden has carried out his oath of office and whether that's impeachable. But the one thing Alan Dershowitz conceded to me was that when Mayorkas went before the House and he testified in committee, number one, that the border was secure and it was not an open border, that he was lying to the Congress of the United States, which is in fact would be an impeachable offense. And Professor Dershowitz acknowledged that. But the problem, of course, with Mayorkas is he's just carrying water for the White House.
Right.
And so,
and we have to get to the bottom of who's ultimately making the decisions that Mayorkas is executing. I mean, we have to figure out how far up the food chain that goes. This isn't something that he dreamt up on day one when he swore in as secretary. He said, "Okay, we're going to open the border and let everybody in with no consequences." So this is an edict from on high, and I think the American people need to know the answers as to who made the decision. Is it President Biden directly? We have a supposed border czar in Vice President Harris.
That's pretty laughable, don't you think?
And I say it just as a punchline because that's what essentially her entire tenure has been. It's a joke. When they said you hadn't been to the border, she said, "Well, she hasn't been to Europe either." I mean, this is someone that's completely in over their head. They obviously come from the radical left, and there's a purpose behind this. I mean, yet you have even. No one's ever going to accuse Mayor Adams of being a rock rib conservative, and he's crying out for help because of this migrant crisis. I mean, we have people coming into this country, and we don't know who's here. We don't know why they're coming, and there's no end in sight. I was speaking to a Texan member. They estimate there's 2 million migrants currently in Texas here illegally. I mean, that's not okay. I mean, that is not okay. I mean, there are 250,000 in the month of December alone. This isn't sustainable.
And it's not. That's right. And by the way, and Jesse and I have been talking about this, and we're talking about it Cats tonight too. Look, it's not. I like Mayor Adams. I know Eric. I think he's trying within the parameters of being a Democrat. He's saying he needs more money. Well, I agree. You need more money if you can allow this flow to go forward. But the real question is, why are you allowing this flow to go forward? You should have a policy like Trump's Remain in Mexico, an orderly legal process. You can't allow people in, catch and release them, and send them on. You can't do that and keep saying you need more money because you're not going to ever have enough money. And your number's correct, 250,000 in December. And what is it going to be in January and every month thereafter? And Jesse and I had a whole conversation last week about, and you're not allowed to say this if this bill that one of your colleagues is pushing through, the lady from Texas, about hate crime language, you can't say replacement theory, because that would be a crime. Remember that, Jesse?
Yes.
Jackson Lee. You can't say replacement theory. Well, you tell me, when you're letting all these people come in and you're sending them throughout every jurisdiction, and every town and every city is a border town or a border city, what do you have? Money's not going to do the answer, and it is a replacement theory and system, and something has to be done about this. Jesse.
Yeah, I think the other issue, Congressman, that is with the border is we deal with the transfer of sex trafficking, human trafficking, and fentanyl, and now even more of these drugs that that are colorful and they're tasty and they appeal to children. It seems like this drug flow has been going, and then I can't find a community, a neighborhood that has not been affected by fentanyl that's crossed through our southern border.
Fentanyl, and that's why you can't look at this border crisis as Mexico versus the U.S. or Latin America versus the U.S. This is the U.S. versus the world and those that seek to do us harm. Yes, there's certainly people looking to come here for better opportunity, like all immigrants, but there's a legal process that they can go through to do that. But this is also, we have a bright beacon flashing for the whole world saying, sneak in here, cut the line. And if we don't have a border, we don't have a country. And the Chinese are peddling that fentanyl across that southern border because they know how they can get that. And the cartels are making millions every single day. In every little town, and I represent the small rural counties along the Pennsylvania line, as well as Erie County where Buffalo is. And our communities are being ravaged by this fentanyl. We have people of all socioeconomic patterns, whether it's, your poorest families, but also the wealthiest are being touched by this fentanyl as people look to get a greater high and take things to a different level, a dangerous level. And it's stealing our youth. It's stealing our future. And this is a unintended consequence of their great experiment to let everyone that wants to come the hell into this country without having any sort of documentation, any paperwork in any sort of order. And, whether it's what's happened in New York City or what's happening to our communities on Long Island or, my communities. The New York Post had a profile of Jamestown, New York, my hometown, where I was born and raised, and how, Colombian migrants are settling in Jamestown because, they're being pointed there because they know there's a lot more Colombian people. They're coming here with absolutely, no licenses, no documentation, no ability to work, and it is going to, put tremendous stress on our social services. And
it's a public health crisis too.
It's a public health crisis, and it's going to be a crime crisis in a state where we already have a criminal justice crisis of our own making.
Well, let's take a break here. Congressman, can you stay on with us?
I sure can.
All right. This is the Long Island Report. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party and Congressman Nick Langworthy. We'll take a short break and we'll be back for a more interesting conversation.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
This is the Long Island Report. We're back. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Garcia of the Republican Party and Congressman Nick Langworthy. Jesse, your turn.
Sure. Nick, let's talk about, listen, in your capacity as state chairman of the Republican Committee in New York, nationally, all eyes were on New York and the fact that a red wave that did not transpire everywhere in the country, it did occur here in New York under your leadership as state chair. And you delivered 11 members of Congress, you flipped the number of seats, and you delivered the Republican majority in the House of Representatives, where there's a 4-vote majority. Let's talk a little bit. How is the delegation, the Republican delegation, fitting in, getting its feet under itself? Give us some insight behind the curtain on how that's happening.
Well, let's start by saying, Long Island delivered a Republican majority, and your leadership, Jesse, as chairman of the Suffolk County Republican Party, as well as Chairman Joe Cairo in Nassau County, went a long way towards that, and it's recognized nationwide. I mean, to have a great deal of respect coming to the New York Republican Party. It's very fulfilling. It's a great way for me to come here to Congress as the soon to be outgoing state Republican Party chairman. But we got the job done in large part because of a great candidacy at the top of the ticket, and that's what Lee Zeldin meant to us. Winning a majority in the House of Representatives cannot be understated. We need to show him a tremendous debt of gratitude for running the race that he did, because he brought so many votes to our ticket, to the Republican line, that just paid huge dividends down ballot. Talking to our colleagues in Pennsylvania, where you had a very weak top of the ticket, and how those marginal seats were flooded out because the inertia of the top of the ticket matters a great deal. So for Lee to lead the way, to get the massive numbers that he did, 47% of the vote, I mean, it made all the difference in the world. And we now have the largest delegation the Republican Party in New York has sent to Congress in 20 years. We have 11 seats, and that really matters, especially when you're looking at a 5-seat majority. I mean, flipping 4 seats from blue to red. We did our job. Florida and New York were the best gainers in 2022. And obviously, we're very grateful to former NY GOP Chairman Ed Cox and John Faso and Ambassador Lauder and everyone that was involved with the redistricting efforts and the lawsuits and that helped get us to this point. But it still requires great candidates, a great message, and the resources to get the message out. So we are leading as a New York delegation. I love it when I'm sitting with Anthony D'Esposito and he says, "Strong Island, New York." Because it's really the epicenter of the flips. But to have Nick LaLota and Andrew Garbarino and Anthony D'Esposito, with the leadership they're bringing to the table, it's huge. And they're great colleagues, and we really enjoy working together.
I'll tell you what I'm very concerned about, Congressman, and to the extent that you can bring forward to the leadership of the House. I think it's time that you had real hearings on Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And I think it's real time that Antifa would be declared a terrorist organization. You hear all this talk about so-called white supremacy. The biggest threat, the most fascistic organization in this country is Antifa. They go from city to city. Who's paying for them? How do they get there? How are they making a living? How do they know to go to a place? They destroy city after city. And I see one of Stacey Abrams' senior people went on television yesterday, and that person said, the attacks against property, that's not violence. I mean, are these people totally insane? What is wrong with them, and how do we hold them accountable?
This is terrorism, and we will, I believe, in the Oversight Committee, tackle this as well. I mean, the summer of 2020, obviously everybody was opposed to what happened to George Floyd with, those rogue police officers, and they're being held to account. But what no one tolerated, but no one has been held accountable for, is the fact that great American cities burned, and there's no arrests, no prosecutions, and we have a lot of questions that need to be answered about what happened in this country in the summer of 2020. But then you see what happened in Atlanta the other night. I mean, I think some of those Antifa members had a real date with the Atlanta PD, and they didn't fare so well. But
not enough of them. They picked up a half a dozen. Look, you had hundreds and hundreds. Look,
But these people get trucked in. I mean, this is an organized front. This is not organic. I mean, I remember, my friend Byron Brown, the Democrat mayor of Buffalo, when this started in our town, he made it clear these aren't people from Buffalo. These are interlopers. These people have come here to create havoc and do harm to our great city, and we're not going to tolerate it. Because it's not an activist city like that. It's a city where we take care of each other. So we have to get to the bottom of this. Use our investigatory powers, our subpoena powers, to really spend the time on Antifa, the relationship undoubtedly to George Soros, who's funding half of the Democratic Party.
Well, that's a good segue, Congressman, because one of the things that's had me very upset as a former assistant attorney general and a Supreme Court justice, is that you have district attorneys and county attorneys not enforcing the law, giving lists of saying, we're not going to charge this. The law says it's petty larceny, and it becomes grand larceny when you exceed $1,000 or you use force. But if it's $900, we'll leave it alone. I mean, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. You're encouraging crime against property. How are business people supposed to survive? They go into stores, they do sweeps of the shelves, everything's locked up, they intimidate customers, they intimidate staff. How do you have a civilized world unless you have public safety and law and order?
You need law and order, and you need accountability in society. People have to worry about spending the night in jail by doing something wrong, and it's one of the great things that holds people back from doing any emotional thing on their mind is the fact that there's consequences. When we tell people that are inclined to be criminals that there are no consequences, all hell breaks loose and society breaks down. And that's what we've seen in New York. And what do you know? Kathy Hochul woke up after, she had the fight of her life in the last election, and now wants some reforms to the idiotic bail policies that she helped deliver and she wouldn't walk away from. She has the power to do something. She needs to do something, but we have to create a culture where we support, people in public office that support the rule of law, no matter what party they happen to be in. I'll work with anyone that supports for a civil society and fights for prosecuting, the crimes that have been committed. And that's really, really important that, and I know Nicole Malliotakis has some legislation that, we might be seeing some action out of the House very soon, holding prosecutors accountable to prosecute the crimes that have been committed.
Jesse.
I know we had about a minute here before we have a hard break, but just give us some insight on the fight that's forming up right now on the debt ceiling. It seems that the Republicans in the Senate are going to kick this to the House to see what it can work out. Where do you see that going? What are your early odds right now?
Well, we have literally, a few months here to get our act together. I mean, I don't think we should be playing, total chicken with, the full faith and credit of the American economy. We need to remain the currency of the world in a surefire way for us to lose our status as a leader in the free world, in the economic world, is to default on our debt. We cannot do that, but it's all the more reason that President Biden has to be willing to negotiate. I mean, this really reminds me of a situation. If your kid runs up a credit card bill while they're in college, it doesn't mean you don't have to pay the bill just because you're mad at them. The federal government has spent $5 trillion in the last 2 years under total Democratic control. Now, are we happy about it as Republicans that lead the House? No. But we have to go pay those bills that have been spent. But we have to prevent it from happening again.
That's exactly
right. And that's what we need.
That's exactly
We need to prevent it from happening again. And we have to put guardrails in place so that we can bend that spending curve down, so we can restore common sense. You wouldn't run a business like this. You wouldn't run your family household like this. I mean, we're spending $1.39 for every dollar the government takes in. It's not sustainable. So we have to have safeguards in place. This Biden administration needs to come to the table with real reforms so that we can raise the debt ceiling and maintain the full faith and credit of the American economy.
Jesse, last word for this segment.
I think that we could probably have a hard break here. It's great to have Congressman Langworthy here, our state chairman as well, and keep up the good fight up there down in D.C.
Congressman,
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Congressman, it's great to have you aboard, and we hope to bring you back soon. Thank you very, very much.
I look forward to it. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
This is the Long Island Report. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. And Jesse and I were just privileged to have Congressman Nick Langworthy of upstate New York, the current state Republican chair. He's a freshman congressman. It was refreshing to hear somebody with real common sense, who has a real vision of what he wants to do as a member of Congress and where he wants to take the oversight responsibilities in the committee he's going to be on. He's on a very powerful committee, and he really seems to know what he's talking about, Jesse.
He certainly does.
So where do you want to go now for this final segment for this week?
Well, final segment, I think two things I want to hit on. First, stupid legislation, or maybe which one? The stupid legislation coming out of California, which will probably hit New York about 6 months later, or something that's a little bit troubling to me. After almost 8 months or almost a year of investigation, the report came out by from the United States Supreme Court that basically indicated that they've identified flaws. They need to tighten up the procedures and protocols, but we don't know who leaked the memo, the draft memo on abortion last February or March. That's a little disconcerting, and I get it. And then I know the reports have indicated that one of the reasons we had this situation occurred is because people were working from home. They blamed COVID, but certainly this has got to be a little bit disconcerting where, how do we prevent this from happening again, where a leaking of a draft decision, which basically led to the influence, placing undue influence on an independent judiciary by activists and by
a threat to the safety of the members of the court.
Safety. Exactly. Never in the history of the court has this occurred, and yet we have the best investigational tools here, and we don't know how that happened. We don't know who committed this crime. If I'm a member of the U.S. Supreme Court, and I'm never going to be that, but
you don't have to be a lawyer, by the way, to be a justice of the Supreme Court.
But I'm not.
So I'll nominate you if you will serve.
I will decline. But how do we now have this trust? I don't know if there's mistrust amongst the justices. There's mistrust amongst the staff and the law clerks. It's amazing how this investigation came up with nothing. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist here, but why did it come up with nothing? How were these procedures so lax, even with the excuse of COVID, that it led to this issue? And how do we prevent it again?
Well, but let me say it's absolutely essential that it never happen again. You're going to have trust in the court and its processes. And the colleagues, the judges and the law clerks and the other staff, it has to be stopped. And whatever protocols they put in place to make sure it never happens again, that's fine with me. But I will tell you this, I'm absolutely outraged that there was this leak because, as I said, with threats to the lives of Justice Kavanaugh, particularly of this draft document because of the positioning. You get some crazy person who thinks if you shoot a Justice Supreme Court of the United States, you get a different result. That's what you're encouraging lawlessness and violence against the court.
Absolutely.
And that has to be stopped. And I'll tell you what I think went wrong here. And I don't mean any disrespect for Chief Justice Roberts, but this never should have been done by the Marshal of the United States Supreme Court. I do not believe he had the skill set and the staff to do it how to be done. I think they should have brought the FBI into this immediately. I think they should have been subpoenaing all the cell phones. I think they should have been doing searches of staff offices and homes. I think even someone suggested they should have lie detector tests. You needed to have an answer. I'll never be happy that we don't have that answer. And again, talking about Professor Dershowitz, I've talked to Alan about this a number of times over the last number of months. And he too believes, having clerked on the United States Supreme Court and knowing all the justices of the court, he believes this is absolutely reprehensible and a danger to the institution. And you need to have an answer. And we don't have an answer. And it looks like we're not going to have an answer. And I'm deeply troubled by that as a lawyer and a former judge. Now, you raised another issue. Crazy California and about a half a dozen other blue states are going to follow in its wake in some variation on a theme, have come up with this great idea called a wealth tax. Now, a wealth tax, Jesse, as you know, is based on the value of your assets. Not that you've realized income, not that you've made money, but every year they come by and they say, oh, these paintings are worth so much, or this house is worth so much, or these stocks and bonds are worth so much, whether you've realized anything or not in the sense of income. This raises very substantial constitutional issues, whether it's legal in the first place to tax that. It raises administrative problems. How are you going to do this assessment? Who makes the assessment? And Jesse, if your house is $2 million last year, but it goes down to $1.5 million this year, and if you have to pay every year a tax, so when it went down from the $2 million to 1.5, but you pay tax on the $2 million, do you get a refund from the government? Do you get a credit against your future income tax? And what does this do in terms of encouraging people to flee these crazy states? That's one issue. The other issue is, and you alluded to this, and it's a very important point. What happens? I'm in New York and I go to Florida, or I'm in California and I go to Texas. They're claiming the right, California, to chase people who've left the state and to assess this tax against them. I mean, how crazy is this? What say you?
I just think it's completely crazy. Here you have a state, and you're basically encouraging, Democrats, progressive state state governments with one-party rule. They're saying we're going to make it uncomfortable, unaffordable, unsafe for you to live here.
Other than that, have a good time.
On top of that, yeah. Other than that, let's have a great time. Then, when you decide to leave my high tax, high burden, high regulation, high crime state, we're going to chase you to Texas, Florida, one of the southern states, or a Midwest state, or wherever you may decide. That is absolutely wrong. There's got to be something unconstitutional about that because it can't move forward. And what's scary about this issue right now, we spoke about the Supreme Court earlier, and we'll get to that in a second. But what's scary about this is that other states, New York, New Jersey,
Illinois,
Michigan, Illinois, will then begin that process, and it'll choke out the entrepreneurial spirit of this country, and also desensitize. It'll provide no incentive for governments to basically check their budgets, check their budgets, and look to scale down overburdened taxes and bloated spending. That's what's going to be wrong in all this. And what's going to be stuck is that we're going to have two classes of people in America: the very rich and the very, very poor. And what you're doing is wiping out the innovation that comes from the middle class, the entrepreneurial spirit, the small business class that comes out of the middle class. That's what these governments are doing, so they can sustain the unsustainable, which are these progressive programs where they give everything for free, no one has to work, and they want the government to run every aspect in an individual's life. That's un-American to me.
Well, you're encouraging people to flee, and who's fleeing? The productive people, the taxpayers,
exactly.
The job creators, the business people, the people who give to charities and donate wings at hospitals, who give to the cultural institutions. Margaret Thatcher once famously said, pretty soon you run out of other people's money. And she was actually absolutely right. And Ronald Reagan famously said, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help," which always was a great laugh line. So here they're telling you that you don't like it here because we're destroying your quality of life and you want to leave, and we're going to hound you and chase you down to get you to pay, even though you no longer have a connection to the state. And I think it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, it's unsustainable. But you know what this is, Jesse, and you've made this point? This is about class warfare. This is about getting away with raiding the pockets of the productive people to give to the people who do not produce, who are the takers. And this is a very dangerous phenomenon because you have more takers than you have givers. Final word, Jesse.
I think you hit it on there. I think that these are nonsensical legislation that's only going to choke out the American spirit, the American innovation, and American entrepreneurs throughout this country. I can't say that word, but more importantly, it's going to choke out the American dream, and we need some more common sense legislation, not one that's going to choke out on the American dream.
Will Rogers once said you had to always be grateful when Congress was not in session. And
exactly.
I say that about the legislature in California, and I say that about the legislature in New York. Well, with that, Jesse, I want to thank you for another great show. This has been the Long Island Report with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg, wishing all our listeners good health and their families good health as well. Talk to you next week. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Hackers don't need much. Just one leaked password can potentially unlock a treasure trove of personal information, leading to stress, pain, and permanently wrecked credit. Don't be an easy target. Get protection by Aura today. Aura protects your identity, finances, and family, all in one powerful app. Get real-time alerts, safeguard your accounts, and block scams before they happen. If identity theft strikes, we help you recover. Stay protected at aura.com/listen. That's AURA.com/listen.